I want you to think honestly about your offense, not the possessions where the first action works perfectly. Okay, not the best pieces of your offense where like you clip it and you can post it on social or anything like that. I want you to think about the possessions where the defense actually plays really solid defense. They guard you. When your first action's taken away, what actually happens next? Do your players instinctively flow into the next attack, or do they hesitate and then not know what to do? Do they look at you? Do they reset? Do they drift into something simple that's really not that effective late in the clock? Because that moment, right after your first action fails, reveals a truth about your entire offensive system. Okay. What we're going to look at right now is the premise of the fix it offense. All right. What are we fixing? Why your offense even stalls in the first place, even if you run some really good stuff, and what's the real problem in the first place. So before we install anything new, we have to be really clear about what we're even fixing. Most coaches think that their offensive issues are a play design issue. This is not football, right? This is basketball. A lot of us go to Twitter and we say, hey, I need a better set. I need a different action, a different alignment. But that's very rarely the problem. The real issue is decision breakdown after the resistance that we meet from defense in the first place. You run your first action, the defense does a good job guarding it. Now what? That's where a lot of offenses stall. It's not that the play was bad or the design was bad. It's that players aren't trained to think beyond that first layer, maybe even that second layer. And so what happens is, we pause, we improvise, we bail the defense out a little bit. Offensive systems usually teach execution, but they do not very often teach reaction. And so watch your film. Freeze it right after that first option's denied. You will see it, specifically at lower levels, or even if your team really is struggling on offense, you struggle to put the ball in the basket for stretches. A slight hesitation, a ball not able to get downhill, players flattening out, energy dropping. That pause after the initial action freezes and it gets defended really well, kills rhythm. And rhythm matters in advantage basketball because advantages are fragile. Advantage has to be attacked immediately when the defense makes its decision. Otherwise, it disappears. And if your players are wanting to see what happens instead of attacking what's happening, you lose control of your possessions. Good defense expects the first action. Like they've been scouting it. They know the things that you run. But great offenses punishes the things that the defense tries to do. We train our players for the first option, and we don't, in a lot of ways, train them for the second layer advantage creation. Here's a little bit of what
moments last year in the NCAA tournament, hit some big shots.
Pay attention right here. On this clip, you get your first action. Maybe it's a ram drag. Maybe it's a get. Maybe it's a stat. Like, whatever you're running, you're going to run some early first action right away.
It's off the back iron,
and if it doesn't yield an advantage, and we freeze right here, the defense is in a neutral position. What do we do from there? How do we attack a defense after our first thing doesn't work? If your players are random with the things they do, not intentional with the things they do, it's going to be a problem for you. So, let's look at this in full time right here.
It's off the back iron, tipped around, and who's going to get it? Florida comes away with it.
Trying to get ball screen, nothing. Trying to attack space, great switch, step back, not a great look. It happens to all of us. Possessions just like that happen to all of us. I'm going to show it again real quick. Your first action doesn't yield anything. Try to get downhill. Defense gets back in front. Now we're stuck in neutral. Now it's like, okay, what do we do? A lot of us just resort to this. Let's get a ball screen. It's disorganized.
AJ Storr with the step back three. It's off the back iron, tipped around, and
throughout the entirety
Florida comes away with it. They get it.
Him some
seasons, but that's the reality for a lot of us. This is what it looks like. I think if we're going to watch film on anybody, watch Illinois. They do a great job of getting into actions after the first action, the second action, the third action, things like that. The basic forms look to the line and they try to get into a little bit of a twist. Nothing there for Walker. All right, well, what do you do? Okay. Attack, still nothing there. Good, let's get into a follow. No, let's get into an angle. Let's be patient.
Z is shooting 83% from the floor on two-point
But again,
attempts.
they are hunting an advantage. They're hunting an advantage consistently throughout the possession. They try to get you a horns twist look, early Spain action. I know a lot of y'all like to run Spain action, and it doesn't yield anything. It doesn't yield anything. So what do? What are the things you do? Give your guys space. If you like playing isolation, trust your guys' hands, that's fine. But I love this stuff right here. You swing it back to the top, and you get right away into an angled screen from this corner right here. Twists it, patient. Defense makes a decision. They made a mistake. They pop open three. Like the flowing of that kind of possession is the type of stuff that I'm really talking about. But it starts with your bailout habits. Let's talk about them. Every team has them. You see them on film. As the possession, it doesn't break down randomly. I think a lot of times it follows a pattern. Maybe you naturally resort to like, hey, let's just get into a high ball screen. Like, let's just get into it. How many times do you actually run that in practice? When your first action gets taken away, there's a slight hesitation, and you start to feel the pressure of the clock, the pressure of the defense, and you default to something that's just safe. Are you defaulting to things that you work on? You know, a lot of us resort to like, hey, let's get an isolation. Let's get a ball screen, try to get a switch. It's a step back. It's hope. I don't love it. I think there's a better way to coach it. There's a better way to teach it. It's not execution. It's survival. And we give ourselves bailout habits a lot because we train the early parts of the clock, not so much the late parts of the clock. Okay. This is foundational. This is foundational, I think, to any offense, whatever system you're running, but it's crucial in the fix-it offense. No paint touch, no rotation, no advantage, right? No rotation means no defensive decision. You are just trying to do one of two things on offense. Get a downhill drive or get a paint touch. Both, right? If you can do that, you make the defense make a decision. And if the defense doesn't have to make a decision, they're comfortable, and comfortable defenses win. What you are trying to do out of the fix-it offense is your first action doesn't work. You know, I don't love that, but fine, it happens. What can we do to put pressure on the defense to get a downhill drive and a paint touch? Most of the time. If we can do that, we're going to be successful. Whether it's, you know, off the catch, off the drive, off a cut, we got to force the defense to collapse. If we don't drive downhill, collapse the defense, force help decisions, we are just passing around the perimeter. We're playing isolation around the perimeter, and our offense is in trouble. From this is where a lot of coaches misdiagnose the issue. They see over dribbling, they see forced shots, they see missed reads, and they blame skill. They try to rep skill, but I think oftentimes it's our spacing. We will talk throughout this a lot about how you have to respace with pace, and you have to get into simple actions that can be done with pace. Spacing doesn't necessarily create the first action, or first advantage, but it very much determines if you can grow an advantage or an advantage dies. I think that's why a lot of first actions die, and I think that's what can create advantages late in clock. When spacing is poor, your driving lanes are narrow, so you can't get your paint touches, you can't get your downhill drives like you want to. Help defenders can load up, they're in a position, closeouts are shorter, and advantages just die. But when spacing is elite and the floor is nice and wide, help has to travel, closeouts are longer, rotations are harder, and a small edge can become a big breakdown. So spacing really, really matters. If you want to screenshot this, be my guest. You know, I want you to picture two different possessions. You have the same action, like a horns twist, whatever, same drive, but different spacing. When your spacing's bad, driving lanes close early. You want there to be long closeouts. You want the defense to have to make a key decision.
And
more often than not.
You don't want to be shamed. You get aggressive trying to take up
Here's
the
an
space.
early action I think a lot of you do. Some sort of stagger look. Defense recovers. Okay. And what do we get into? Well, you know, a ball screen that it's not really a screen, not really an advantage. Now we're stuck playing ISO ball. We can get a paint touch, but we're kind of throwing crap up. A lot of us do. That is what a lot of us do.
You don't want to be shamed. You get aggressive trying to take up the space.
The thing, again, that we are trying to train to the best of our abilities, if we can't get downhill drives and we're stuck and defense is at a neutral, We've got to be able to create an advantage. We've got to actually be able to set a ball screen and actually be able to do some things to help us be more elite in the 15 seconds on the clock,
you don't want to be
10
shamed,
seconds on the
you get
clock.
aggressive trying
Not
to
just
take up
resort
the
to
space,
ISO ball or resort to, whatever. Okay? A lot of us have a robotic set-based offense. We tell them, hey, run here, screen here, reverse it here, now wait. That's what our first action can be. I'm not saying don't have sets, but then our players want to execute that choreography perfectly. And when the choreography breaks, they freeze. Basketball is not a script. It is very dynamic. I think we have to properly understand that. If your players only know how to run a play, but not know how to solve a problem, the offense dies the moment the script doesn't go according to plan. And so as we go through this is not going to be sets that you get into after your first set doesn't work. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about solving problems that are consistently presenting themselves when you are stuck in neutral and what that looks like. This is a big one. Just because your offense moves doesn't mean it threatens. You can cut, you can screen, you can reverse, you can lift, you can drift, a whole lot of things, but you can never actually create pressure. So just because you move a lot doesn't mean that you're creating an advantage. Advantage requires the defense to shift out of its structure. It requires you to puncture it. It requires collapse. It requires rotation, a closeout decision. Frame everything that you do from this. Don't just have movement, just have movement. False motion is okay right at the beginning of a possession, but what are you doing after that? We have to stop confusing busyness with breakdown. The real disease, how should this affect practice? Well, we got to forget teaching fancy sets at the end of the day. We have lack of advantage creation, lack of advantage recognition, lack of second layer decision training. We need this to show up every day. I think this is one of the most important things we can work on every day. Respacing, reattacking, play the 2-on-2, 3-on-3 game consistently. Create the advantage. Don't just play from an advantage in practice. I think that's huge for us. So through this, we are building 4 different things, and I look forward to you working with us on this. How do we create an advantage? How do we read an advantage? How do we sustain an advantage? And then how do we flow either into the next action or flow into, maximizing the advantage to get an elite shot at the end of possessions? That is the framework of our whole thing. There's going to be a lot of nuance that I'm going to reference through this. Consider this, lesson 1, showing the problem for that. Okay. If you're really interested in this and you are involved in this heavily, homework on film, find one possession where your first action fails and it stagnates. Find one possession where, the first action fails and you get into an immediate reattack and you actually get a downhill advantage. Let's find those moments where we are successfully fixing it and those moments where we aren't doing the best job fixing it. If we coach it, it happens. If we emphasize it, it shows up more often. That's just how it goes.